The vast emptiness of space was shattered by a message that echoed across the stars. It was a threat so terrible that it made even the bravest aliens tremble. The Zorkath, a race of giant, tentacled creatures from beyond the edges of the Milky Way, had sent their ultimatum: surrender or be destroyed. In the great halls of the Galactic Council, panic spread like wildfire. Representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered, their faces twisted with fear. The Zorkath were known throughout the universe as unstoppable conquerors. No one had ever survived their attacks. Grakthar, the oldest and wisest member of the council, called for order. His wrinkled green skin quivered as he spoke. "We must unite. Only together can we hope to face this threat." But his words fell on deaf ears. One by one, the supposedly brave races of the galaxy began to make excuses. The Krell, known for their warrior culture, were the first to back down. Their representative, a tall, muscular being covered in scales, stood up. We must protect our own world first," he stammered, his voice lacking its usual confidence. Next were the Valerians, masters of advanced technology. Their holographic representative flickered nervously. "Our weapons are not designed for such a massive threat. We cannot help." Even the Draconians, a race of dragon-like beings who prided themselves on their courage, found reasons to avoid the fight. "Our ancient laws forbid us from engaging in conflicts outside our star system," their representative said, not meeting anyone's eyes. As more and more races made their excuses, a heavy silence fell over the council chambers. The threat of the Zorkath loomed larger than ever. In a corner of the room, largely ignored by the others, sat the human representative. Jack Thompson was a middle-aged man with graying hair and a kind face. He had been quiet throughout the meeting, watching with growing concern as race after race backed out of the fight. Finally, he stood up. "What about Earth? What about humans?" he asked, his voice steady. The chamber erupted in laughter. Grakthar looked at Jack with pity in his large, bulbous eyes. "My dear Jack," he said gently, "we appreciate your offer, but this is not a fight for, well, for humans." "What do you mean?" Jack asked, genuinely confused. A Krell warrior sneered. "He means you're too weak, too cowardly. Everyone knows humans are the scaredy cats of the galaxy." Jack's face reddened, but he held his ground. "We may not be the strongest or the most advanced, but we're willing to fight. Doesn't that count for something?" The Valerian representative's hologram flickered as it shook its head. "Bravery without power is useless. The Zorkath would crush you in seconds." But Jack tried to argue, but he was cut off. Grakthar raised a hand for silence. "I'm sorry, Jack, but the council has spoken. Humans will not be part of this fight. For your own safety, we ask that you return to Earth and prepare for the worst." Defeated, Jack slumped back into his seat. As the meeting continued around him, he pulled out a small communicator. With shaking hands, he sent a message back to Earth. Plan B. They won't let us help. Preparing to return home. Meanwhile, the council continued to argue, their voices growing more desperate by the minute. The Zorkath's deadline was approaching, and they had no plan, no united front to present. As the day wore on, more details about the Zorkath emerged, each more terrifying than the last. They were a race of enormous beings, each the size of a small moon. Their technology was centuries ahead of even the most advanced council races. Their warships could destroy entire planets with a single shot. Fear turned to despair. Some representatives openly wept. Others argued furiously, blaming each other for their weakness. A few simply sat in stunned silence, unable to process the magnitude of the threat they faced. As the meeting drew to a close, Grakthar made one last attempt to rally the council. "Please," he begged, "we must stand together. If we don't, all is lost." But his words had no effect. The chamber was filled with the sound of shuffling feet and muttered excuses as the representatives prepared to return to their homeworlds. Many were already making plans to surrender to the Zorkath, hoping to save their own skins. Jack watched all of this with a mixture of disappointment and determination. As he prepared to leave, he overheard two Krell warriors talking. "It's hopeless," one said. "The Zorkath will be here in 3 Earth months. We don't stand a chance." 3 months, Jack muttered to himself. Maybe that's all we need. As he boarded his ship for the long journey back to Earth, Jack's mind was racing. The other races might have given up, but he knew humanity wasn't ready to throw in the towel just yet. They had a history of beating the odds, of surviving when everyone said they couldn't. Looking out at the stars, Jack allowed himself a small smile. "They think we're cowards," he said to himself. "Maybe it's time we show them what humans are really made of." As his ship jumped to light speed, leaving the Galactic Council and their fear behind, Jack couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. The road ahead would be hard, the odds nearly impossible. But if there was one thing humans were good at, it was achieving the impossible. The Zorkath were coming. The galaxy's bravest had already surrendered. Now it was up to the cowards of Earth to save everyone. And despite everything, Jack couldn't wait to get started. Jack Thompson's ship landed on Earth with a soft thud. The moment he stepped out, he was surrounded by a group of serious-looking men and women in dark suits. Without a word, they ushered him into a waiting vehicle. "I take it you got my message," Jack said as the car sped away from the spaceport. A stern-faced woman nodded. "We did, Mr. Thompson. The President is waiting for your full report." Within an hour, Jack found himself in a secret underground facility, facing not just the President of the United States, but a group of world leaders connected via secure video links. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jack began, "the situation is dire. The Zorkath are coming, and the Galactic Council has essentially given up." He explained everything he had witnessed at the Council meeting: the fear, the cowardice, and the dismissal of humanity's offer to help. The President leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "And they think we're too weak to fight?" Jack nodded. "They called us cowards, Madam President. Said we'd be crushed in seconds." A silence fell over the room. Then, surprisingly, the President smiled. "Well," she said, "I think it's time we show them what these cowards can do." Over the next few weeks, Earth became a hive of activity. On the surface, everything seemed normal. But underground, in secret facilities all over the world, humans were preparing for the fight of their lives. In a hidden lab beneath the Sahara Desert, Dr. Amina Khoury hunched over a microscope. She had been working for days without rest, fueled by determination and copious amounts of coffee. "I've got it," she suddenly shouted, startling her team. "The nanobots are ready." Her colleague, Dr. Chen, rushed over. "You're sure they can penetrate the Zorkath's defenses?" Amina nodded, her eyes shining with excitement. "These little guys can eat through any known material. If the Zorkath are as big as they say, these nanobots will bring them down from the inside." Meanwhile, in a secret hangar in Siberia, test pilot Yuri Volkov climbed into the cockpit of a strange-looking aircraft. It was small, almost tiny compared to regular fighter jets. "Are you sure about this, Yuri?" his commander asked through the radio. "This mosquito is untested." Yuri grinned as he strapped himself in. "That's why I'm testing it, sir. Besides, if the Zorkath are as big as they say, we'll need something small and annoying to get under their skin." The mosquito roared to life, its experimental engines allowing it to move with incredible speed and agility. As Yuri put it through its paces, he couldn't help but laugh. "Let's see those alien bastards try to swat this fly." In the depths of Silicon Valley, a team of the world's best hackers and programmers worked tirelessly. Led by a young prodigy named Zoe Chen, they were developing a virus unlike anything seen before. "If their tech is as advanced as we think," Zoe explained to a visiting general, "this virus will be our ace in the hole. It'll turn their own systems against them." The general looked skeptical. "And you're sure it'll work on alien technology?" Zoe's fingers flew over her keyboard as she spoke. "Sir, code is code, no matter where it comes from. And this? This is the nastiest code you've ever seen." But it wasn't just about developing new weapons. Humanity knew they needed allies, even if the Galactic Council had abandoned them. In a small, nondescript office in Geneva, diplomat Maria Gonzalez was having a secret meeting with representatives from some of the smaller, often overlooked alien races. "We know the Council has written off this quadrant," Maria said, her voice passionate. "But we humans aren't giving up. Join us! Together, we might stand a chance." A small, furry alien named Blixall spoke up. "But what can we do?" "We're not warriors," Maria smiled. Neither are we by galactic standards. But we're survivors. And sometimes, surviving is the bravest thing you can do. One by one, the representatives nodded. They would stand with Earth. As the deadline approached, tension on Earth reached a fever pitch. But strangely, there was also a sense of excitement, of purpose. In Times Square, a giant countdown clock had been erected. But instead of spreading panic, it seemed to galvanize people. Volunteers lined up around blocks to join the Planetary Defense Force. Scientists worked around the clock, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Even children got involved. In schools across the world, kids designed posters and wrote songs about standing up to the Zorkath. One particularly catchy tune, "We're Not Scared of You," became an unlikely global anthem. 2 days before the Zorkath were due to arrive, Jack Thompson found himself back in the underground facility where it had all started. The room was packed with military leaders, scientists, and diplomats from around the world. The president stood at the front, her face resolute. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "in 48 hours, we face the greatest threat humanity has ever known. The galaxy thinks we're cowards. They've written us off." She paused, looking around the room. "But they don't know us. They don't know our history. Humans have faced impossible odds before, and we're still here. We've survived ice ages and plagues, wars and disasters. We've gone from caves to the stars in the blink of an eye, cosmically speaking." Her voice grew stronger. "We may not be the strongest or the most advanced species out there, but we are innovative, we are determined, and most importantly, we don't know when to quit." A cheer went up from the crowd. The president raised her hand for silence. "The Zorkath think they're coming to conquer us. I say let them come. Let them see what these cowards can do." As the room erupted in applause, Jack felt a surge of pride. He thought back to the dismissive aliens at the Galactic Council and smiled. They had no idea what was coming. In orbit around Earth, a small fleet of ships from Earth's new alien allies took up defensive positions. On the ground, final preparations were made. Weapons were checked and rechecked. The mosquito fighters were fueled and ready. Zoe's virus was primed for upload. Dr. Curie's nanobots were loaded into missiles. As the last hours ticked away, a strange calm settled over the planet. Humanity had done all it could to prepare. Now they waited. In homes around the world, families gathered together. There were tears, yes, but also laughter, love, and an indomitable spirit. If these were to be humanity's last hours, they would face them head-on. As the countdown clock in Times Square reached 0, a massive shape appeared in the sky. The Zorkath had arrived, but Earth was ready. The cowards were about to show the galaxy what real bravery looked like. The sky turned dark as the massive Zorkath ships entered Earth's atmosphere. They were enormous, each one the size of a small moon, just as the reports had said. Their surfaces gleamed with an otherworldly metal, covered in strange symbols that pulsed with an eerie light. In the secret command center deep beneath the Pentagon, Jack Thompson stood next to the president, watching the main screen with a mixture of awe and fear. The room was silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. "My God," someone whispered. "They're huge." The president's voice was steady as she spoke into the microphone. "This is the President of the United States, representing Earth. We will not surrender. We stand ready to defend our planet." For a moment, there was no response. Then, a booming voice filled the room, so loud it made the equipment rattle. "Pitiful humans!" the Zorkath leader growled. "Your bravery is amusing but futile. Prepare to be annihilated." The president nodded to the commander of Earth's defense forces. "General, you may proceed." The general barked into his comlink, "Operation Mosquito, go!" High above the Earth, Yuri Volkov led a squadron of the tiny, agile mosquito fighters towards the nearest Zorkath ship. "Remember the plan," he said to his pilots. "We're the distraction. Make it count!" The mosquitoes zipped around the massive alien ship, their energy weapons barely leaving a mark on its hull. But that wasn't the point. They were there to annoy, to distract. Inside the Zorkath ship, alarms blared. "What are these?" a Zorkath commander bellowed. "They're too small for our main weapons to target." As the Zorkath frantically tried to swat the mosquitoes, they didn't notice the real threat approaching. From the dark side of the moon, a fleet of larger Earth ships emerged, led by Maria Gonzalez and her alien allies. "Now!" Maria commanded. Missiles streaked from their ships, heading straight for the Zorkath vessel. But these weren't ordinary missiles. Each one was loaded with millions of Dr. Corey's nanobots. The missiles impacted the Zorkath ship, seeming to do little damage. The Zorkath laughed. "Is that the best you can do?" Their laughter didn't last long. Within minutes, alarms were blaring throughout their ship. "The hull is being eaten away!" A Zorkath technician cried out in panic. It's disintegrating." Back in the command center, Dr. Corey allowed herself a small smile. "Told you they'd work," she said to no one in particular. But the battle was far from over. While one Zorkath ship was in trouble, others were preparing to retaliate. Energy beams of incredible power lashed out, destroying several of Earth's ships and causing massive damage on the ground. "We need to take out their weapons," the general shouted. That was Zoe Chen's cue. From her computer terminal, she initiated the upload of her virus. Come on," she muttered, fingers flying over her keyboard. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then suddenly, the Zorkath ships began to behave erratically. Their weapons fired wildly, often hitting their own ships. Some began to drift aimlessly in space. Yes, Zoe pumped her fist in the air. Their systems are ours now. The tide of the battle was turning, but the Zorkath weren't done yet. From the largest ship, a new threat emerged. Hundreds of smaller craft poured out, each carrying Zorkath warriors ready for hand-to-hand combat. "They're going to try to invade on the ground," Jack realized with horror. The president's face was grim. "Then we'll meet them on the ground. Activate the defense force." All around the world, millions of humans who had volunteered and trained for this moment sprang into action. They weren't professional soldiers, but rather ordinary people, teachers, farmers, office workers, all united in the defense of their home. In New York, a group of Broadway actors used their stage fighting skills to surprising effect against the confused Zorkath warriors. In a small village in Kenya, local hunters armed with traditional weapons joined forces with their high-tech allies. The Zorkath, used to easy conquests and quick surrenders, found themselves facing an enemy unlike any they'd encountered before. Everywhere they turned, humans were there, fighting with a ferocity that belied their reputation as cowards. In Rio de Janeiro, a group of Zorkath warriors cornered a team of human defenders in a dead-end alley. The aliens advanced, sure of their victory. Suddenly, the humans broke into an impromptu samba, their rhythmic movements confusing the Zorkath long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Meanwhile, in orbit, the battle raged on. Yuri and his Mosquito Squadron continued to harass the Zorkath ships, drawing their fire away from Earth's main fleet. "We can't keep this up forever," Yuri grunted as he narrowly avoided another energy blast. "You don't have to," Maria's voice came over the comm. "Look!" From Earth, a new wave of ships was rising. But these weren't military vessels. They were a motley assortment of private spacecraft, from billionaires' space yachts to a swarm of small, homemade rockets. "What is this?" the Zorkath leader demanded. Jack Thompson's voice answered, "Broadcast across all channels. This is humanity united. You thought we were cowards? Let us show you what Earth's cowards can do when we stand together." The civilian ships swarmed the Zorkath vessels. Most were unarmed, but they didn't need weapons. They simply needed to get close enough to deploy more of Dr. Corey's nanobots. On the ground, the tide was turning as well. The Zorkath, expecting an easy victory, found themselves bogged down in thousands of small skirmishes. Human ingenuity and adaptability were proving more than a match for Zorkath's strength and technology. In London, a group of construction workers used their equipment to trap Zorkath warriors in quickly dug pits. In Tokyo, gamers used their quick reflexes and strategic thinking to outmaneuver the aliens in the city's narrow streets. As the battle entered its 6th hour, the Zorkath found themselves in a position they'd never experienced before. They were losing. "How is this possible?" the Zorkath leader raged. "They're nothing but weak, cowardly humans." In the command center, the president allowed herself a small smile. "General, I think it's time for our final push." The general nodded and gave the order. All around the world and high above it, Humans and their allies launched a coordinated assault. Mosquito fighters darted in and out, herding the damaged Zorkath ships into killing zones. Nanobot-laden missiles struck with pinpoint accuracy. On the ground, Defense Force units pressed their advantage, pushing the confused and demoralized Zorkath warriors back. Hour by hour, the Zorkath were forced to retreat. Their mighty ships, once seemingly invincible, were now limping away, huge holes eaten in their hulls by the relentless nanobots. Finally, after nearly a full day of non-stop fighting, the Zorkath leader's voice boomed out once more. But this time it was shaky, uncertain. "Humans of Earth," it said, we offer our surrender." A cheer went up from every corner of the globe. In the command center, tears of joy and relief flowed freely. The president stepped up to the microphone one last time. "We accept your surrender," she said firmly. "Now leave our planet and never return." As the remaining Zorkath ships limped away from Earth, Jack Thompson turned to the president. "We did it," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "We actually did it." The president nodded, a tired but proud smile on her face. "Yes, we did. The cowards of Earth just saved the galaxy." As news of the victory spread, celebrations broke out all over the world. Humans and their new alien allies embraced, marveling at what they had accomplished together. Earth had faced its greatest threat and emerged victorious. The cowards had proven to be the bravest of all, and as the sun rose on a new day, it shone on a planet forever changed, a planet ready to take its place as a force to be reckoned with in the galaxy. The news of Earth's victory over the Zorkath spread across the galaxy like wildfire. At first, no one believed it. Surely it was some kind of mistake or propaganda. The cowardly humans defeating the mighty Zorkath? Impossible. But as more reports came in, and as the battered Zorkath fleet limped back to their home world, the truth became undeniable. The impossible had happened. Earth had won. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, chaos reigned. Representatives from hundreds of worlds argued loudly, their voices a cacophony of disbelief, anger, and fear. Grakthar, the old and wise counselor, banged his gavel repeatedly. "Order!" he shouted. "We must have order!" Slowly the noise died down. All eyes turned to Grakthar, seeking answers, explanations, anything to make sense of this shocking turn of events. "My fellow counselors," Grakthar began, his voice trembling slightly. "We have received confirmation. The humans of Earth have indeed defeated the Zorkath invasion force." A murmur rippled through the crowd. A Krell warrior stood up, his scales bristling with agitation. "How?" he demanded. "How could those weaklings possibly defeat the Zorkath when we, the mightiest warriors in the galaxy, could not?" Before Grakthar could answer, the doors to the council chamber burst open. In strode Jack Thompson, flanked by Dr. Amina Khoury and Zoe Chen. The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on the humans. Jack stepped forward, his face serious, but his eyes twinkling with a hint of mischief. "Honorable members of the Galactic Council," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the hall. "We come bearing news from Earth. We know the news, human," a Valerian representative snapped. "What we want to know is how. How did you defeat the Zorkath?" Jack smiled. "It's quite simple, really. We did it together." He went on to explain how Earth had united in the face of the threat, how scientists, soldiers, and ordinary citizens had all played crucial roles. He told them about the nanobots, the mosquito fighters, and the computer virus that had turned the tide of the battle. As Jack spoke, the mood in the council chamber began to shift. Disbelief gave way to amazement and then to a grudging respect. Dr. Khoury stepped forward. "Our victory wasn't about having the biggest weapons or the strongest warriors," she said. "It was about innovation, adaptability, and the courage to try the impossible." Zoe nodded in agreement. "We looked at the problem differently. Where you saw an unbeatable enemy, we saw weaknesses to exploit. Where you saw certain defeat, we saw a challenge to overcome." The council members listened in stunned silence. For so long, they had dismissed humans as primitive and cowardly. Now they were forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew. A draconian representative, his dragon-like features twisted in confusion, spoke up. But you're not warriors. You're not conquerors. How could you have such courage?" Jack's response was simple but profound. Because we had no choice. Our home was threatened. Our families were in danger. And when pushed to the wall, humans will always fight back. As the implications of Earth's victory sank in, the mood in the council chamber changed once again. Fear began to spread among the representatives. If humans could defeat the Zorkath, what else were they capable of? A Valerian hologram flickered nervously. Are you planning to conquer the galaxy now? It asked hesitantly. Jack, Dr. Curry, and Zoe exchanged amused glances. Conquer the galaxy? Jack repeated. Why would we want to do that? But you have proven yourselves the strongest, the Krell warrior said, sounding confused. Is that not what the strong do? Conquer the weak? Zoe shook her head. That's not our way. We defended ourselves, yes. But we have no interest in conquering anyone. What we want, Dr. Curry added, is to work together, to share knowledge, to explore, to learn from each other. The council members looked at each other, unsure how to respond to this unexpected declaration. Grakthar, who had been listening silently, finally spoke up. And what of the Zorkath? What became of them after their defeat? Jack's face turned serious. We offered them peace, he said. We told them that if they agreed to stop their conquests and join the galactic community peacefully, we would help them rebuild. This revelation caused another uproar in the chamber. Offer peace to the Zorkath? Help them? It was unheard of? And did they accept? A small, furry representative asked in a squeaky voice. Jack nodded. They did. It turns out, when you treat even your enemies with compassion, amazing things can happen. As the council tried to process this information, a new voice spoke up. I think it said that we owe the humans an apology. All heads turned to see Blixall, the representative of one of the smaller races that had allied with Earth. He stood proud and tall, his fur bristling with excitement. We called them cowards, Blixall continued. We dismissed them as weak and primitive. But they have shown us what true courage looks like. They have taught us that strength comes in many forms. One by one, other representatives began to nod in agreement. The Krell warrior, who had been so dismissive earlier, stood up. The humans have proven themselves true warriors, he said gruffly. We would be honored to call them allies. Jack smiled. We would be honored to be your allies, he said. All of you. But on equal terms. No more talk of strong races and weak races. No more dismissing others as cowards or primitives. We're all in this together. As the council members digested this, Grakthar stood up. I believe, he said slowly, that we have much to learn from Earth. Perhaps it is time for some changes in how we do things. He turned to Jack, Dr. Curry, and Zoe. Would Earth be willing to take a seat on the Galactic Council to help guide us into this new era? The three humans exchanged surprised looks. This was more than they had ever expected. We would be honored, Jack said finally. But we have a condition. A condition? Grakthar asked, raising an eyebrow. Jack nodded. Yes, we want seats for our allies, too. The races who stood with us when everyone else had given up. They've earned their place here. There was a moment of silence, then Grakthar nodded. Agreed, he said. Let this be the start of a new chapter in galactic history. As the council chamber erupted in applause, Jack couldn't help but smile. They had come so far, from being dismissed as cowards to saving the galaxy and ushering in a new era of cooperation. As he looked around at the cheering aliens, at Dr. Curry and Zoe standing proud beside him, at Blixall and the other allies who had taken a chance on Earth, Jack felt a swell of pride. The galaxy would never be the same. The galaxy, and humanity, the once dismissed cowards, would be leading the way into a brighter future for all. 5 years had passed since Earth's shocking victory over the Zorkath. The galaxy had changed dramatically in that time, with humans and their allies taking a leading role in the Galactic Council. But not everyone was happy with the new order. On a distant planet called Nexus, a group of disgruntled races had formed a coalition. They called themselves the Purists, and they believed that humans and their ideas were corrupting the natural order of the galaxy. Jack Thompson, now Earth's permanent representative to the Galactic Council, received the alarming news during a routine meeting. The Purists have declared war on Earth and its allies, Grakthar announced, his voice grave. "They claim that humans must be removed from the galactic stage for the good of all." A hush fell over the council chamber. The specter of another war, so soon after the Zorkath invasion, was terrifying. "How many ships do they have?" Dr. Amina Khoury asked, her fingers already flying over a datapad as she calculated potential strategies. "More than the Zorkath had," Grakthar replied grimly. "And they've been studying your tactics. They believe they're prepared for anything you might do." Jack exchanged a look with Zoe Chen, who had become Earth's chief of cybersecurity. "Well," he said with a wry smile, "I guess it's time to show them some new tricks." Over the next few weeks, Earth and its allies prepared for war once again. But this time was different. Instead of working in secret, they openly shared their plans and innovations with the entire galaxy. "Let them watch," Jack said when some counselors expressed concern. "Our strength isn't in our secrets. It's in our ability to work together, to adapt, to think creatively. That's not something they can copy." As the Purist fleet approached Earth, the planet was ready. But not in the way anyone expected. Instead of warships, they were met by a swarm of small, unarmed vessels. Each one carried representatives from different races across the galaxy: scientists, artists, teachers, and ordinary citizens. "What is the meaning of this?" the Purist leader demanded, his voice booming across all communication channels. Jack's voice answered calmly. "We're here to talk," he said. "To show you who we really are and what we've accomplished together." The Purist ships hesitated, confused by this unexpected response. Taking advantage of their uncertainty, Zoe activated a special program. Suddenly, the Purists found their weapon systems offline, replaced by holographic displays. These displays showed scenes from across the galaxy, scenes of cooperation, of progress, of problems solved, and lives improved. They saw Zorkath working alongside their former enemies to terraform barren planets. They watched as human medical techniques saved lives on worlds they'd never even heard of. "This is what you're really fighting against," Jack's voice explained. "Not corruption or disorder, but growth. Change. The opportunity to become more than we ever thought possible." On one Purist ship, a young officer named Krell watched the displays with growing wonder. He had joined the Purists believing he was protecting the galaxy. Now, he wasn't so sure. "Sir," he said to his captain, "maybe we should listen to them." Similar scenes played out across the Purist fleet. Doubts began to creep in. Was this really the enemy they had feared? But the Purist leaders were not so easily swayed. "Ignore this trickery," their supreme commander ordered. "Prepare to attack." Yet when they tried to fire their weapons, nothing happened. In the confusion, they didn't notice the swarm of nanobots that had been quietly dismantling their weapons systems. "We don't want to fight you." Jack's voice came again. "But we will defend ourselves if we must. The choice is yours." For tense hours, the galaxy waited. The Purist fleet hung in space, weapons disabled, faced with a choice that would shape the future of all races. Finally, a new voice spoke up: Krell, the young officer who had first voiced his doubts. I think we should talk," he said hesitantly. "I want to understand."